Well, the time is now 7 o'clock. I will call the May 22nd, 2018 meeting of the Millcreek Township Board of Supervisors to order. Mr. Groh, I believe you have some special guests today for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes, we do. We have members of Troop 54 of the Boy Scouts, and they are affiliated with the Church of Latter-day Saints over on Perry Highway, I believe. Is that correct? And they're going to lead us on our pledge tonight. So, gentlemen, if you would please come forward. I think you guys know the rest of it.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from May 8th?
Yes, I'll move to approve those minutes.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Mr. Groh?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next is the approval of the bills. Is there a motion to approve the bills?
Yes, I'll move to pay the bills.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Mr. Groh?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
Vote yes.
And I vote yes. Next is our bids and quotations. And the first is from the Police Department for vehicle purchase. Request comes from Chief Height. Mr. Groh, do you want to take that? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
I can
Bach.
take it.
I apologize.
Yeah, no problem.
No problem. Okay, we have a request here from Chief Scott Height, Millcreek Police Department, requesting authorization to purchase a 2018 Ford Escape from TriStar Ford in Blairsville. TriStar is provided with a quote for $22,420, contract number 026-087. Purchase was approved in the 2018 capital budget. And the second request is for TriStar Motors to purchase 5 surplus Ford Crown Victorias that the township has for $3,000. If approved, the $3,000 would be applied to the sales price of the Ford Escape. They'd be part of a trade-in. The total purchase price of the 2018 Escape would therefore be $19,420. All 5 of the Ford Crown Victorias were identified by Joe Yatzer from our garage as surplus, and the price offered by TriStar is in line with the fair market trade-in value. A list of the Crown Victoria vehicles by VIN number is attached. I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Gentlemen, before we take the motion, I do apologize. At top of our agenda, I did not ask for public comment on agenda items. So before we take any additional votes, I apologize.
Yep.
Would anyone from the public care to address the board regarding any of this evening's agenda items? Okay, thank you. I apologize, gentlemen. There is a motion for Mr. Bach to approve the vehicle purchase. Is there a second?
Yes, I'll second that motion.
Any questions or comments from the board?
None for me.
No?
All right, Mr. Groh.
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item is the Municipal Building 88 project. It's a change order number 1 for the project from the engineering office. Ms. Sokol?
Yes, when they were redoing the sidewalks to make them compliant out front of the building here, the original sidewalks, when removed, were extremely thick. They were 2.5 feet thick throughout, which required extra equipment, an air compressor, jackhammer, and about 5 hours extra manpower. I think it's fair to say that they should be compensated for that. That's not something that you would expect to find when you dig up a sidewalk. We recommend approval of it. It will fit into the budgeted amount. It will not take us over the budgeted amount for this project.
Okay.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, and just a quick question. Where was that section of concrete at? Was it right?
From there all the way around, the whole thing. The thickest part was over by the police
Yeah.
section, but the whole length of it.
Wow. Okay. Just curious of where that was at there.
Yeah,
That's abnormal, that amount of concrete to be poured there.
You would usually think that a sidewalk would be
Yeah.
4 to 6 inches
4 to 6,
thick,
yeah.
and then maybe where that had a curve, you might go down to 9 inches and have the bevel. So,
Not this
but
case,
no,
okay.
that was ridiculous.
Okay. Just needed to know that. Thank you.
Mhm.
Wow.
Is there a motion to approve the change order number 1 to Amendola Development for additional amount of $2,230.50?
Yeah, I'll move for that change order number 1 for this project.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Groh?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next is the emergency tree removal request from the Public Works Department. Mr. Snyder?
Yes, this would be retroactive approval. Last week, we had a tree that was in danger of harming our bridge on Cider Mill Road. It's a wooden bridge, so we needed to get the tree down right away. It was taken down by Leopold Tree and Stump Removal for the cost of $600, and I would recommend approval for that price.
Any questions from the board?
Not for me.
Is there a motion? Is there a motion to approve the expense for $600 for tree removal to Ben Leopold?
Yes, I'll make a motion for that.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Groh?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item is the automatic pool cleaner from the Parks and Recreation Department. Mr. Groh?
Yes, this comes from Ashley Marsteller, Director of Parks and Recreation. She's requesting that we purchase a new automatic pool cleaner, and this is for the Bell Valley Pool. With a quote, this is to replace the one that has gone bad over there. The quote from, wait a second here, give me just 1 second. This comes from B&R Pools out of Pittsburgh for the amount of $3,200, and that's a CoStar's price. The CoStar's 14 contract. Warranty on this unit is a full 3 years, parts and labor. So I'll put that in the form of a motion for that purchase.
That was for a total of $3,200, Mr. Groh?
Yes, yeah, $3,200.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Any questions or comments from the board?
John?
Mr. Groh? Oh, yes, Martin.
Just to let you know, this item was not originally in the budget, and it will be covered by the maintenance and repairs budget from the Parks and Recreation Department. So that will have to be, show up as an amendment to the capital budget at a future date.
Okay.
Duly noted. Thank you, Martin. Call for the vote. Mr. Groh?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next on the agenda is the Bell Valley Park and Pool ADA Project Award. Report from the Engineering Office. Ms. Sokol?
Yes, we opened up bids on Wednesday, May 16th at 3 o'clock. We received 4 bids from Amendola Development. It was $53,569. From Mayer Brothers Construction, $74,000. Perry Construction Group, $102,000. And from Russell Standard was $34,890. I had originally budgeted in this year's budget $60,555. Because of the big gap for the low bid, I did contact the low bidder, Russell Standard Corporation, who we have worked with in the past and had very good luck with. They've always been an upright contractor. I spoke to the CEO of the company. He was comfortable with his price. He is aware that it's a prevailing wage job and was familiar with the project itself. So for that reason, we recommend that we award the project to Russell Standard Corporation for $34,890.
Any questions from the board?
None from me.
No?
Actually, I think it's $34,980 is the thing. I think it inverted one of those numbers.
That was my fault, I'm sorry, I typoed it on there. I have the actual bid opening list, and it's $34,890.
Okay.
I apologize.
Okay.
So they did meet all the bid specs? They were fully aware
They
of the
read all the
project?
bid specs, they were aware of what the quantities were, they were familiar with the project, they had gone on site. They were aware that it was a prevailing wage job.
All right. Well, lucky us then.
Comfortable.
All right, is there a motion to approve the contract with Russell Standard Corporation for $34,890?
Yeah, I'll move on that.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Groh?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
I vote yes.
And I vote yes. Next item is the Millcreek Golf and Learning Center from the Parks and Recreation Department. Mr. Groh or Mr. Shaw here to discuss where we're at with the golf course.
Do you want to take it, Mark? Do you want
Sure.
me to? It
I
doesn't
can-
matter. I'm not trying to throw it to you, but.
I can leave have the
Okay.
details here. As part of the construction at the Millcreek Golf and Learning Center, one of the tasks that needs to be completed is the grow-in of the various areas that are being seeded, including a number of the greens and so forth. That type of work requires a professional to oversee it and to ensure that the areas are properly mowed and properly fertilized and insecticides and so forth. And we've proposed to enter into an agreement with Dave Olson with Premier Turf Farms, who is very qualified and has done this type of work in the past, has all the licenses that are necessary to apply the various materials that would need to be applied. The overall cost of his services and for the use of his equipment between May 25th through the end of October of 2018 is $19,975. We do have a provision in the agreement that if the township ends up getting an operator in the meantime, his services can be terminated on 7 days' notice. And he's quoted his services based on a monthly work. Each month is valued at a certain amount. The agreement does not include material that would be purchased separately by the township. He does estimate that the cost of that would be approximately $5,200. I would suggest, in addition to approving this agreement with him, that the supervisors approve the purchase of the necessary materials at a not-to-exceed number of $5,200 so that each purchase doesn't have to keep coming back for your approval on that, because that'll need to be purchased on a fairly regular basis. And so that's where things are at. Mr. Olson has already signed the agreement, so he's fine with all the terms and conditions of the agreement and is ready to start on the 25th, which is the date that the contractor indicated we may need somebody in place to start.
Mr. Shaw, I apologize. What was that total again? 19,000?
It's $19,975 is the total.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Once again, this item wasn't budgeted because the assumption was initially that the operator would take care of this. So to the extent that we need funds to cover that, it's going to come from the MYA project line item from the capital budget, because that seems to be on hold at this point. And once again, a budget amendment will have to be made for that.
Thank you, Mark. I guess just to clarify, we did go out for quotes. We put an RFP, request for proposals, for operators
Correct.
that would manage the grow-in and operate the facility. We did not receive any qualified quotes, actually any proposals.
Correct. No, we did not get any responses from any of the operators who actually came in and picked up materials. There have been continuing discussions with operators who are interested. The timing of things are such that we need to have somebody to go in and actually start doing this grow-in before we're really in a position to retain an operator at this point in time. So fortunately, Mr. Olson came highly recommended. I believe Ms. Marsteller, met with him a couple of times. I was very comfortable with what he had to say and his description of things, and he has all the equipment that's needed to do all this work, which is a key component as well. So I think I would certainly recommend that the supervisors approve both this agreement as well as approve the expenditure for materials at a not-to-exceed number of $5,200.
Is there a motion to approve the contract with Premier Turf Farms, the contract price of $19,975, and to approve essentially an expense account for the Parks and Rec Department for materials related to this project?
Right, yes, I will move on both of those.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Groh?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item on our agenda is Resolution 2018-R19, a resolution pursuant to Resolution 2015-R20 and the Municipal Records Manual to approve proposed disposition of certain township records. This is a routine action that we take to authorize the disposition of dash cam videos once they reach the required expiration date where we can actually delete them. So today would be the authorization of deleting dash cam videos that reach their expiration date between the dates of May 23rd, 2018 and June 5th of 2018.
Shouldn't it be June the 12th? That's our next meeting. I know that's what the request says, 5th, but they usually try to go to the next meeting.
Yeah, I think Mark's correct on that.
Duly noted. Let Chris know he messed up his memo. Well, then is there a motion to approve the deletion of dash cam videos which reach their expiration date between the dates of May 23rd, 2018 and June 12th, 2018?
Yes, I'll move on with that correction on the date.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Groh?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. It's a well-oiled machine this evening, gentlemen. I apologize. Next item is Resolution 2018-R20, a resolution to designate and/or confirm designation of persons authorized to initiate actions to enforce township ordinances exclusive of traffic citations and other matters to be enforced solely by the Millcreek Township Police Department, and to offer testimony as custodians of records and/or responsible officials. I'll throw it over to you, Mr. Shaw.
Yes, this is simply a resolution to clarify who within the township and what positions within the township have the authority to enforce the various resolution or various ordinances within the township code. The township has recently kind of changed position names and so forth, so we had to kind of update and clarify, who was responsible for doing things. Some of the prior resolutions that did that had indicated names of people as opposed to positions and so forth. So this is simply just kind of cleaning that up and making sure that kind of all the i's are dotted and t's are crossed.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Any questions or comments from the board?
None for me.
Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2018-R20?
Yeah, I'll move to approve the resolution.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Groh?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item is Resolution 2018-R21, a resolution to assess the cost of street lighting upon various properties abutting on streets in various subdivisions within the township of Millcreek. Assuming that's going to be Mr. Zachewski.
Yes, we've got all the rate schedules in from Penelec and our electrical supplier. And so these get fed into a giant spreadsheet that then calculates the cost per light, and then it further gets spread out into contracts so that we get a cost of lighting per frontage foot of each resident that has streetlights in their subdivision. I reviewed the basic data from Penelec and the electrical supplier, and it appears to be in order.
No big surprise. And I know a few years ago they tacked on an additional fee. That's
Yeah, it was like a change in the one of the tariffs. Not so much this year. The rates are up ever so slightly, but we're talking pennies as opposed per light, as opposed to 50 cents or whatever. So it's a very tiny increase.
all right. Any questions or comments from the board?
Just a quick comment. I'm sorry, Jim, were you saying?
No,
something? Oh,
no,
okay.
nothing here.
We don't set the rates. I know we get a lot of screaming, people scream at us about, or the lack of service from Penelec. We have control over neither one, folks. I just want to say that once again publicly. I know that our streetlights clerk takes a lot of abuse in regards to that. Not a lot of it, but a lot of questions and sometimes some abuse from the public. We don't set the rates, folks, and we don't set the service schedule for lights that are out. So bear with us. We get a hold of Penelec and get upset just as much as the residents do. So just wanted to add that out there too. So thank you.
All right. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2018-R21?
If I could, Mr. Chairman, before that's done, the resolution references ordinance number 2013-2. To update that from the code perspective, it should be Chapter 91, Article 2, would be the reference to that, and we can correct that from a documentation standpoint to have the correct code number on it, just so we have that updated would be my suggestion.
Be sure to forward those details to Ms. Williams.
Yeah, I will.
Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2018 R21 as amended by recommendation of Mr. Shaw?
Yeah, I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Grove?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item on our agenda is the pension plan certificate of authority. Mr. Zakrzewski.
Yes, this is a request from one of the asset managers for the pension plan. This happens to be the multi-employer property trust. Periodically, they need documents signed in order to dispose of assets and things like that. Actually, I don't think I've ever seen anything from them, but they're cleaning up their records and they need a designated person to sign if, in case something like that ever comes up. And so the idea is to have myself as the Chief Administrative Officer to sign for any changes that they may need.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions from the board?
No?
Is there a motion to grant Mr. Zakrzewski signature authority regarding the New Tower Trust Company?
Yes, I'll move to approve that signature requested.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Grove?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item is the MCH Corporation stipulation to settle and discontinue. Well, that sounds interesting. Mr. Shaw?
Sure, this relates to a tax assessment appeal filed by MCH Corporation. They actually had filed appeals on several, I think, adjacent parcels that they had acquired. They subsequently consolidated those parcels, and a new kind of tax assessment for that consolidated parcel was created, so that the appeal that they issued or had filed with respect to this parcel that's the subject of this stipulation is now moot, and they just need to, are okay to file this document to, the stipulation to settle and discontinue, which I would recommend that you approve us to execute and submit.
And they're not going to appeal this new consolidated project?
I think they have, but at least they're getting this one out of the way.
Yeah. Just for the record, MCH is Millcreek Community Hospital, for those who may not be aware what that acronym stands for. Millcreek Community Hospital.
That's correct. or LECOM, if you
Or,
want to say, yeah.
well, yes, one is the other, in some cases.
All right, any additional questions or comments from the board? All right, is there a motion to approve the agreement for stipulation to settle and discontinue with subject parcels really, with MCH Corporation?
Yeah, I'll move.
Is there an enthusiastic second?
There is a second.
He does sound enthusiastic on this one.
Mr. Grove?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Light and loose today at Supervisor meeting. All right. Next is certificate of approval for the Westlake Fire Department tax exempt purchase. Well, Mr. Groh, you are the former liaison to our Fire and EMS Commission. Mr. Bach, you are our current liaison, so which of you gentlemen would like to discuss the Westlake Fire Department request for tax exempt purchase?
Well,
Mr. Grove can take it.
okay. First of all, I think this should be continued for another meeting. I thought that we were going to have a representative from the Westlake Fire Department here to explain this. I don't know, would it be out of line to bring up some comments, Mark, under this? Even
No.
though- Okay.
I mean, you can certainly discuss it, and if you
Okay.
ultimately decide to table it,
Right.
that's appropriate.
Okay. I'll try to give you the Cliff Note version. As many of you know, Millcreek Township passed an ordinance last January forming a Fire and Emergency Medical Services Commission. The purpose of this commission was to help find solutions, both funding and servicing, for the fire departments and emergency medical services here within the township. The spirit is of working together, collaborate, cooperate, and whatever the other words that might be used to describe working together. And in part of this, the last fall, the fire departments, which they knew right off the bat that they were going to have to submit a capital budget request to us of what was going to be, what they needed to purchase. Did we get one from the?
No, we did not get one.
Okay, we did not get one from Westlake. And although they made a presentation back last year to the Fire Commission talking about the equipment that they had, and that at that time they had already placed an order the year prior to the commission being formed for a new engine to replace engine 483, which I'm not going to doubt that was 20 years old, that engine, and that is a little bit longer than a normal fire engine would last. So anyway, this boat we discovered was not on their list at all of anything that they had seen that they were going to be purchasing for this year. So this all came as a surprise to us, as you can imagine. I think the boat cost was $170,000 with a trade-in of, I think, $60,000. Was that correct there? Somewhere in that
50,
vicinity
I think,
there. So anyway, we're just confused as to the need. I think we know the need for it, but how this whole thing came about of course, they're not asking for township money, just asking for us to endorse the fact that this is a tax-exempt organization. Is that correct? Would that be the best way to describe it, Mark?
Purpose of what they're asking for is a certificate of approval that they need for tax purposes, so that the debt that they would be incurring would qualify as tax-exempt debt for purposes of their lender. And in order to do that, the township must certify that the project for which they're going to incur this indebtedness is in the public interest and provides for the health and safety of the residents of Millcreek, and further that the approval would be in the public interest of the citizens of Millcreek.
Right.
But without someone here to explain
Yes.
the predicate of that, it's hard, frankly, to certify without
Right.
any additional information, I think.
Yeah. It is just a bit confusing, so by no means are my comments anything that's accusatory. It's just a matter of, we need to know what's really going on here. So it is, I think that we should hold off on action on that. Would tabling this be the proper action on this, Mark Shaw?
I think you could certainly table it or...
Table it to a future meeting?
Yeah, either for a future meeting, or if a decision is made to potentially recess this meeting, because I believe there are some
Okay.
other potential actions that need to be taken care of that
Okay.
may not be quite ready yet, but may be ready in a day or two, that it could be picked back up at that, after that recess.
Okay. I guess the thing that I'm thinking here, and I'm not sure if my colleagues are thinking the same, take no action at this time, take it at a future meeting, and see where it goes from there. So I don't know if that means a formal action of a table, or...
You would need to make a motion
Okay.
along those lines, yes.
Okay. I think we should, I'm going to move that we table this action to a future meeting. And I think we're going to have one in the next few days, I believe. So,
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Grove?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item on the agenda is the Millcreek Paramedic Service lease approval. Mr. Shaw, Mr. Zakrzewski, care to discuss the lease with MPS?
Well, earlier, it's been actually quite a while, MPS came to us looking for expanded space. And with the rearrangement of the engineering and sewer authority and all those departments, there's available space upstairs. So we negotiated a lease where they're essentially doubling their square footage. Not quite doubling, but pretty close. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So they're going to 19,000 or 1,914 square feet at $16.50 a square foot, which is the standard rate that we've been charging, generally charging tenants in the building. We've got one more lease to still work on, and that will probably happen later this year. So the lease is going to be for $31,581 per year. or $2,631.75 per month. It goes from July 1 until June 30th, 2022.
Thank you, Mark.
And if I just add, that's July 1 of 2018, and that was really to make it coincide with their fiscal year, which is, I think, July to June. And the terms of the lease are our standard terms with some minor changes to reflect some of the unique things that relate to MPS. So,
Any questions from the board? Is there a motion to approve the MPS lease?
I will move to approve the MPS lease as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Groh?
I vote yes.
Mr. Buck?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item on our agenda is memorandum of understanding for multi-municipal collaboration with the Jefferson Society. This is regarding to a potential ECRA grant application that I believe the Jefferson Society is making. Mr. Spagan is actually here from the Jefferson Society. If you'd like to address the board, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Please state your name and address
Mr.
for the board,
Supervisor.
please. Name and address, please.
Benjamin Spagan, 415 West 29th Street, Erie, Pennsylvania, 16508.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Supervisors Groh and Bach, thank you. Gentlemen, ladies, thank you for having us. First, I'd like to thank on behalf of the Jefferson Educational Society your support of the same grant application last year. This helps fund in part the Civic Leadership Academy run by the Jefferson Educational Society, as well as the Jefferson Dinner Series. We have not changed much from last year, but we have had great success last year. We now have an alumni base of graduates of the Civic Leadership Academy of more than 70 individuals. They have since formalized an alumni network association to do volunteer work throughout the county. We've had 30 plus applicants this year that we are currently processing. I'm happy to report that 6 of those are from Millcreek, Millcreek Township. Per last year's memorandum of understanding, we are providing scholarship opportunity for Millcreek residents. We are also working with Millcreek as we do our countywide sessions. That's part of the backbone of what we do with the Civic Leadership Academy. Likewise, involvement in the planning for the Jefferson Dinner Series. I'd be happy to field any questions that you gentlemen might have, but this is largely the same MOU that we are asking that we asked of last year.
What's this year's project you're working on?
This group action project this year is poverty. What we do each year that I've been directing the program is we invite the alumni back in. We ask them what critical issues they see facing the county. It's helpful to get their perspective after having spent 7 months studying Erie County, traveling throughout the region to various municipalities. They came up with a great number of issues. They discussed it at length and then actually voted on it, and poverty emerged as this year's group action project. So the 2018 class will be tasked with that. We look forward to seeing what their research is. As a friendly reminder, last year we took a look at the opioid crisis facing Erie County. Last year's cohort produced a media awareness campaign. They used the skills and resources of those in the cohort, 2 filmmakers we happen to have. So they launched a media awareness campaign. It's been incredibly successful, driving traffic to the Jefferson website where we posted resources and information for those seeking help, for those seeking help. It has been an encouraging project to know that it's still ongoing. In fact, tomorrow, Thursday night, at the Jefferson, the 2017 cohort will actually present an update on their findings and what's happened since they've graduated. The year prior, they took a look at blight in Erie County in 2016.
Any questions or comments from the board? And just to clarify, Mr. Spagan, the multi-municipal agreement is really to authorize the Jefferson Society to go after these funds. There's no matching requirements on behalf of on the municipality's parts regarding this grant application.
You are correct, sir. There's no financial obligation from any of the townships signing an MOU with us.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the MOU with the Jefferson Society?
Yes, I'll move to approve that MOU.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Mr. Groh?
I vote yes.
Mr. Buck?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you, Mr. Spagan.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Ben.
Next item on our agenda is stormwater maintenance plan and agreement request. Today's is Sarah Reed Children's Center Residential Building, Sarah A. Reed Children's Center Developer. Ms. Sokol?
Yes, this is the Sarah Reed Children's Center on West 34th Street. They submitted a stormwater management plan, which was reviewed by GPI, our consultant. We did receive an approval letter from them, therefore we do recommend that we approve the stormwater maintenance agreement. We also have the signed document by them.
Thank you, Ms. Sokol. Any questions or comments from the board? Is there a motion to approve the stormwater maintenance plan agreement request with Sarah Reed's Children's Center?
Yes, I'll move to approve both of those.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Grove?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item on our agenda is communications. Mr. Juszewski, anything to report?
I have nothing further.
Next, we have summer seasonal staff approvals for the Parks and Recreation Department and the Traffic Department.
Okay, give me just 1 second to pull this up. It moves very slow. Okay. Oh, come on.
I get it.
Jeez. Okay, this comes from Ashley Marsteller, Director of Parks. Summer hires, employee approval for the summer. There we go, okay. There's a whole list of, and this is for the classes, summer season 2018, and they start June 11th. There's a list of employees, there's 2 pages of them working at different pools and at youth camps. Adult fitness, adult leisure, barn supervisor, and summer maintenance. That list, some of them are new hires, some are returning people there. And then we also have some volunteers on that. So this is what we typically do this time of year, is bring on some summer help. And they are here only for the summertime for these programs. And then they're not terminated, their term of employment ends, and then possibly rehired next year for the next season. Put on a form of motion to approve those hirings as listed, at the rates they are listed to.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Grove?
Vote yes?
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item is for seasonal staff approvals for our traffic unit. This comes from Diane Lyons. It's the seasonal hire for our traffic and electricians office. This would be to hire Mr. Jacob Chimero for seasonal help at a rate of $8.45. Retroactive start date of May 14th. Sorry, Mr. Dragas, that was your department.
Oh, that's okay, yeah, that's fine there. Yeah, it's for the hiring seasonal help in the traffic department, Jacob Chimera, at a rate of $8.45 an hour. This is his 3rd season working for us. It'll be effective May 14th, so we're retroactive on that. And that goes through the end of August. I believe he is a college student, I think, and we end, the term of employment for summer help ends at the end of August, so they go back to college, wherever they might be going, so. So I make that in the form of a motion for that hiring.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Grove?
Vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The next item is a dispatch employee change request. Again, comes from Ms. Lyons. Mr. Bach, do you want to handle this one?
Certainly, thank you. Request from Diane Lyons regarding approval for Nicole Bridges, police dispatch, to move from full-time to part-time employment. The rate would be $14.42 an hour starting on May 25th, 2018. Nicole Bridges is currently one of our full-time dispatchers. She is leaving that capacity and moving on to other employment outside the township, but has agreed to stay on and be put into the pool of available part-time dispatchers. Should the need arise, she would be available to come in on an as-needed basis, and obviously she's already trained, so it's a good win-win for both parties. I recommend put that in the form of a motion.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Mr. Grove?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Gentlemen, I want to bring up one other issue related to seasonal employees. I know we've had a lot of discussion lately about the Golf and Learning Center. I received inquiry from a resident regarding our driving range. I understand we're likely not hiring an operator this summer.
Yep.
The driving range, from my understanding from Ms. Marsteller, will not be impacted by the construction or the grow-in. I think she's looking for some direction from us on whether or not she should proceed with hiring seasonal staff for the driving range. I think it makes sense for us to authorize her to do so. I just want to have a brief discussion with you gentlemen, if we should direct her to do so, or if there's other concerns about opening the driving range this summer.
I thought that she had somebody on staff, or some people that she could move over there. I know we had started to talk about this in our meeting on Monday of this week. Was it?
Yeah, my
maybe last
understanding
week?
is she has,
Yeah. I mean, if we have to hire some more people, I'd like to find out first just what can be done. If she can move employees from another area to that, to cover that, that's one thing. If they need to be hired, then that's another. So,
my understanding is it's part of her usual seasonal hire. It was in her budget. She was
Okay.
waiting for authorization to proceed with bringing those, I
Okay.
think, 2 seasonal positions on board out of Mr. Bond.
That was my understanding, that she has the personnel available.
she has them on staff already.
That's
right?
my understanding, yes.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I haven't been down to the driving range in a year or so, but I would agree that I think we should be,
We should, yeah.
you know, operating it and having it available, June, July, and August at minimum, as long as we can staff it. Why not,
Yeah.
why not make use of it and try to generate, a little bit of revenue through it?
Yeah. Speaking of that, Mark Shaheski, the revenue, I think that was one of the things we talked about. How much money was actually made? I mean, it's hard to gauge what could happen this year. I mean, here we are near the end of May.
It was more than enough to cover the cost of having people down there.
Okay, so we're not losing money on the
Right.
deal then, okay. Okay.
Well, in that case, I'd make a motion to authorize the Parks and Rec Department to proceed with opening the driving range. Hopefully by June 1st would be the preferred date.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll second that.
All right, thank you. Mr. Grove?
I'll vote yes, yeah.
Mr. Bach?
I vote yes.
And I vote yes. Next item on the agenda is MPD requests from Chief Height. Mr. Bach?
Yes, had a request from Chief Scott Height from our Police Department. This past Monday, or last Monday, on May 14th, Chief Height received notification from one of our current lieutenants in the Police Department, Chris Lucas, informing us that he will be retiring effective May 31st of this year, and therefore Chief Height is requesting that the Board of Supervisors authorize the Police Department to begin the process for the replacement of Lieutenant Chris Lucas. That would involve going off the current hiring list, which is still in effect, and this would be to start the process of replacing Lieutenant Lucas with a probationary patrolman at that starting rate, and it involves interviews and the process. So this is just authorizing that process to begin.
Thank you, Mr. Bach. Any questions from the board?
Technically, he's retired already. Technically, he's retired already. I mean, he was entered in the drop at some point. That's when you actually technically are retired. He's just going to stop working at the end of the month.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for the
Thanks for-
clarification,
yeah.
Mr. Chesky. Did you put that in the form of a motion, Mr. Bach?
I'll put that in the form of a motion. Thank you, John.
Is there a second to authorize the chief to proceed with the hiring process to replace this retiring officer?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Mr. Grove?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next on the agenda is executive sessions. The board did hold 2 executive sessions, one on May 10th and one on May 21st, to discuss various legal and personnel issues with our solicitor and executive staff. Also notice that there will be a special public meeting of the Board of Supervisors this week, this coming Thursday, May 24th at 9:30 a.m. We have some bid openings. We have a bid opening on Wednesday that we will likely like to take action on Thursday, so that will be the purpose of that special meeting. Again, that'll be at 9:30 a.m. Next is the Student Ambassador Report.
McDowell Girls Athletic Club will be hosting its annual Walk for the Cause tomorrow, May 23rd, during school. The proceeds from this event go to Make-A-Wish Foundation and American Cancer Society. So we're just glad that we're glad that the Girls Athletic Club could have another successful year of this great event.
Okay. Can I say something here? I'm sorry, don't mean to interrupt. Aaron, I think this is your final meeting with us here as a student ambassador, and of course, our last meeting was Lily's last meeting with, or final meeting with us. What the college plans do you have? Have you decided yet where you're going to go?
Yeah, I'm going to Gannon.
Gannon,
in the fall.
okay, great. That's this has been a great program that we've had with the Millcreek School District, McDowell High School, and their counselors. I just want to wish you all the best. I think on behalf of the board, I think we all want to see the best for you. Also, we've had some student interns this year. Corey Wodarczyk, who is going on to the U.S. Air Force Academy, and I think he's going for a degree in political science, I think is what he is. And then Kaylee Myers, who is still here, I think this is her second semester as working in the finance department. And she's a senior student there at McDowell and graduating this year in a few weeks, going on to Penn State, I think pursuing a degree in finance. So it's been great having you students along with us, and hopefully we'll have the same group there next year, a group that is equally qualified. So wish you guys the best.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Solicitor Communications. Mr. Shaw.
Yes, we received a contact recently regarding a tax assessment appeal that relates to Wegmans, and there apparently are some discussions that would potentially resolve that matter. This is a matter that predates us becoming the solicitor for the township, and although the prior solicitor did not intervene, our firm represents Wegmans in matters, and so when the call came in saying, hey, we might need this resolved, there may be some agreements to review because of our relationship with the township and Wegmans, it makes sense for us not to be involved in that. So we would suggest that the township get a separate counsel in order to review any agreements that may come across relating to that. As you know, in the past, Attorney Adair has handled these types of tax assessment appeal issues when we've been unable to be involved. I did contact him. He is able and willing to assist. So I would recommend that he be retained to provide advice to the township on this matter if it should become necessary. He has an existing agreement with the township from August 29 of 2016. I think the current rate under that agreement is $210 an hour, and I would recommend that this matter be added as a matter covered under that existing agreement.
Mr. Shaw, do you have any estimate of how many hours this might take, or?
Should be a few hours, I wouldn't think it would be that many. It's simply, if they resolve it, it'll simply be reviewing the agreements just to make sure there's nothing that's, out of whack from the township's perspective.
Any questions or comments from the board?
None for me.
Is there a motion to authorize Evan Adair as our, to provide legal services regarding this tax appeal?
This is the one for Wegmans, yes, I'll move on that.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Grove?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
Vote yes.
And I vote yes. Mr. Bach, is there another announcement you wanted to make today?
Thank you. I neglected to do that after my police request. Just wanted to publicly acknowledge National EMS Week. This week from the 20th to the 26th is designated as National EMS Week for the emergency services providers across our country. It would include paramedics, medical technicians, firefighters, that type of employment. So just wanted to publicly acknowledge that and give a shout out to all those professionals that are doing that job.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Bach.
Thank you.
Also, I'd like to make a brief announcement. This coming Thursday at 6 o'clock at McDowell Intermediate High School, we will be debuting the Embrace Millcreek plan. This is the township's new comprehensive plan that we've been working on for the better part of the past year and a half with our planning commission, the board, our staff, our planning and development department. And we've had a lot of public input during this process. We've already had 6 public meetings. This will be the 7th opportunity for us to put these kind of ideas and concepts out for the public to review. So we really encourage folks to come out to McDowell Intermediate at 6 o'clock this coming Thursday. We'll have about an hour-long presentation for folks to sit through, and then after that, it'll be about an hour Q&A for residents to ask members of the board, members of the Planning Commission, township staff, and our consultant team any questions they might have about the plan. Also, the plan will be made available on Thursday on our website, embracemillcreek.com, for anyone to download and review, and we'll be accepting comments at that public meeting and also accepting comments via email or in writing throughout June. So there's still plenty of time to review the plan, to provide comments, and provide input to us. The final plan will not be presented to the board for approval until August. So just want to make sure residents understand that there's still plenty of time to review this, and let us know how you feel about it. Any other comments from Mr. Shaw? Mr. Jaschinski? Gary and
Cheryl.
all right, with that, citizens to be heard. Would anyone like to address the board this evening?
I don't gotta sign this, do I? Gerald's Video, 1720 West Gore Road, Erie, PA 16509. I got a question. It's concerning, I believe it's Beaver Run from Beach Street west to Walnut. Now, before that used to be cleaned up. Now, there's some trees growing in there. Hazlitt was at my daughter's house. Is Hazlitt going to take those trees, them little trees out of there? I don't know if this belongs to him as a question or to engineering, Public Works or engineering.
I do believe that there is a perpetual easement that we are permitted to clean with proper notification along that stretch. That's why it's always been cleaned. I'm not sure if our forces have gone there and done that in the past, or if it's been bid out.
No. Mr. Kuyawa used Summerhill.
He used summer help to go out and cut that up. So I did not notify Hazlitt. I mean, I don't know, did your daughter notify him, or?
Well, they're talking about cutting trees for the, Penelec, but the trees that are down by the creek. Now, I'm just worried about the same problem you had before. You had to go in there and build that tunnel. You remember the bank washed out? You had to go down and reinforce that.
The retaining wall that failed years ago.
So, I mean, you're looking at trees, it's not, and I believe Millcreek owns that. I do not believe that, I believe Millcreek owns that property, or
I don't
is it the
believe-
homeowners?
It's the homeowners, I believe.
So I can go back there, weed whack, I could cut them down, but that isn't gonna stop them from regrowing.
Yeah, and you usually, DEP does not like or allow you to take the root system out of the ground because
Sure.
it holds the bank in. So they frown on that.
Oh, I know that.
Having them mowed down and cut is one thing, and you're allowed to do that without a permit anyway, as long as you remove the debris. You can't leave it lay there. It has to be taken up out off the banks and off the top. You can't leave it right on top where to wash back in either.
Well, I thought part of the agreement when that happened was they put that arborvitae down behind my daughter's house running west over to that piece of property that Perkins ends. I believe Millcreek still owns that piece of property right there.
Yeah.
So, as to my understanding, Millcreek came in and from the neighbor, who knows more than I do, because that was my father-in-law's property. But he said Millcreek went in there and more or less purchased that, or purchased an easement maybe? I don't
We
know.
might have received an easement
Yeah.
from them, but I don't know that we purchased it. But I can research it. I can look back in the files and see what we do own there.
I knew Millcreek put the arborvitae there.
Yeah, I'm sure they had to do a lot of things when that fell in.
Sure. Because I'm back there and, I want to trim, I want to keep some of that down. I don't think it would really affect my daughter, but to my concern, and I walked down through that creek with Mr. Kuyawa and Mr. Morris, at least once, and we talked about that property that ends on Perkins and continues, and the kids walk across the creek. That's, So I want to find out what is, what isn't,
Oh, I can look it up and give you a call.
please.
Okay.
You know, I don't
I
know, I'd
have
like to
your
lay it
number.
on him.
What's that?
I'd like to lay it on this gentleman. I got one other comment or question. Interesting articles in the Sunday paper about whether the township stands tax-wise, money. And then on Monday, you know, you talk about Embrace Millcreek. It says this plan would also focus on incentives and support for businesses. As a taxpayer, how can we be crying poor in one piece of the paper, and then, to me, incentives either mean taxes, tax breaks, or grants or something to businesses, you know, along this way, and I just, you already went over the MCH, and I realize litigation is expensive, you know, with them, and they have a lot of more money than, I would say, Millcreek does to pursue it. But, I mean, this is like bringing up one instance of where we're in trouble, and here, to me, you know, you're feeding the dog again. The dog ain't protecting anybody. Millcreek's made a lot of money for a lot of businesses. I mean, you go up by me, all the, you know, the development up there for the Pastores, Molino. I mean, I remember one time I ran and Mr. Pastore said, Millcreek doesn't make money for us, we make money for Millcreek. He was an arrogant person. And there's incentives to come to Millcreek, and I think that should be enough of an incentive without, to me, incurring this cost on the taxpayer. And I know you're having a difficult time with your contract with the personnel. There's only one issue I stand on it with that. I mean, that was settled a long time ago, unfortunately. And it's hard to give up anything. The only thing I ever was concerned about was longevity pay. But I just see this as a no-win situation, this paper, and then this paper coming behind it. Comment?
Absolutely. Well, you're referring to the early intervention program study that we authorized last year, and to me, Jerry, Mr. Savidio, I apologize.
It's all right, no problem.
They're part and parcel of the same initiative. Embrace Millcreek is both a comprehensive plan, and it's also a communication strategy, it's also a development strategy for the township. And to be able to have an honest conversation, we needed to understand our current conditions. So the EIP study is a very honest look at our operational needs in the township, of a structural operational deficit that we have in the township that I think we do need to take an honest look at. But at the same time, just because we have challenges that we need to address does not mean we stop thinking about the future, does not mean we stop looking how we can improve our township. One of the things in EIP that they discuss is kind of the natural growth of tax revenue from assessed values increasing due to inflation, due to new development. So in order for us to grow without having to always rely on millage increases, we need to actually grow the township from a building standpoint. When we talk about incentives, we've identified several areas in the township that really are starting to become blighted. I think we can probably all think of several properties along 8th Street, 12th Street, 26th Street that are currently sitting in really a blighted condition. So when we talk about incentivizing, we're not talking about incentivizing the Peachtree Corridor. We're not talking about incentivizing the Millcreek Mall. We're talking about how do we identify strategic areas in the township that are blighted, and how do we encourage developers to, instead of going out to Summit and out to Fairview and out to Harbor Creek, how do we encourage those developers to come onto these corridors that are aging, that are a little more decrepit, and clean them up and put something new in place. So I understand where you're coming from. The idea, I know that the city has been discussing some kind of a citywide LERTA program to give everybody a tax break for building new, and that's not the approach we're talking about. We're talking about very strategic areas for LERTA development, very strategic areas for possible TIF development, not a township-wide blanket, and certainly not giving incentives for corridors that are currently thriving. So I understand exactly where you're coming from as far as being concerned about that. As far as other business incentives, what we've been looking at, I'll give you an example. The opportunity zones that were recently discussed in Pennsylvania under the new tax law that was passed last year. We were the first municipality in the county to apply to try and get opportunity zone designation from Governor Wolf's office. That designation would not have impacted our local tax base. It would not have offered incentives on property tax or income tax. It would have authorized incentives for investment taxes to try and encourage investors from around the nation and around the region, around the state, to basically invest deferred capital gains taxes into projects in Millcreek Township. So there are a plethora of different kinds of investments and incentives out there that we can pursue that don't necessarily mean giving a township-wide 10-year LERTA to have businesses build something and not pay taxes. So that's not at all what we're referring to when we talk about that.
I didn't think it was that. Well, you know, you got enough blight in the catch basins that are in every road in Millcreek.
Absolutely.
They're all caving in. I don't know who put them in, you know, perhaps, and I'm not saying it's the fault of anybody. Maybe they weren't trained to put them in if it was somebody from the township. I'm being honest. Not everybody can lay concrete, not everybody can get up and do your job.
Sure.
Not everybody can answer a phone correctly.
Right.
I certainly am the grumpiest thing in the world to listen to on the phone. So, you know, if you're talking blight, you know, let's fix Millcreek first. I think, you know,
you're not wrong. Yeah.
I just find it ironic that we're worried about. For a long time, working for Millcreek was not the greatest job in the world, and that's how the benefits came about. The benefits incentivize people to work here.
Sure.
Now, and as with any industry or any business, employees are the biggest cost anymore. And
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, you know, I'm a strong believer in paying people. It's a sad world out there. You look around. I mean, Wegmans' #3 employer, and half the people up there are on the access card just to buy their own dang food.
Right.
So, you know, let's not take it out on all the employees in Millcreek and then turn around and give it away to businesses. Please, think about it before you do it. We have a pretty good township here. Little lacking in the snow removal that we used to have. Nothing I do.
Yeah, see, I don't think that's true at all, to be honest with you.
then
And
you haven't lived
I'm
here
going
as
to
long
challenge
as
you
I
on
have.
that. We do have an exceptional workforce here in Millcreek Township, and they do great work.
I agree with that.
And we had a winter that was literally historic in proportion this past year. So I respectfully disagree with you, Mr. Video.
But I remember back when I was younger going to work every day. Hey, at 6:30 or 6 o'clock when I went to work, the roads were clear. It was done and over with. That doesn't happen very often. The kids walk in the roads with the snow on the road. I'm sorry. It's just the way I feel. I appreciate you disagreeing. And I've talked to him about it also. So thank you. But again, thank you for letting me comment on these issues.
Absolutely, and like I said, we'll actually be presenting the plan on Thursday. If you want to come out and see the full presentation, I'd be happy to answer your questions there too, Mr. Video.
Sure. Thank you.
Just before you go, just to clarify something, that property from Perkins Street West that you're talking about belongs to the sewer department.
The one, the empty lot?
Yes.
That's all.
Mr. Kuyawa and
Yes.
Mr. Moore's, the one that
Yes.
Chuck maintained all the time?
Yes.
Now, they said they were going to deed it to him.
Now, right now, that property belongs to the sewer department in Millcreek.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've noticed that there's been a lot of bank work done down there. That was a joint project.
Right now. Oh, that project that's just going on now. Yeah.
Right.
Where, behind that? Behind it?
Down where the blue tanks are and further east.
Oh, well, I'm talking right.
At the bottom of the park.
Yeah. That's who owns that property. Like I said, the Perkins Street, where we cut the grass.
You don't cut the
West.
grass. Chuck cuts the grass.
Yeah. whoever.
Actually, he should have eminent domain over that, because he's taken care of that for how many years, if you think about it.
Okay.
Either way.
I'm not trying to be a pain in the butt.
Well, no, I understand that. I'm just saying that that's
Okay.
who owns that property.
Yes.
Okay.
We don't own down to the water line.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe-
Can't go in there and do anything on the banks other than that. Like I
Mr.
said,
Snyder, I don't mean to interrupt you. Mr. Savidio, would you be comfortable having this conversation
Yeah, we can
offline
talk
after the
after.
meeting?
Yeah, you're fine, you can adjourn.
Okay.
No big deal, I'll wait.
Okay.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you, Mr. Savidio. Any other comments from the audience this evening?
Just one
Oh.
quick thing there. If we have students out there that need their paperwork signed, please come forward after the meeting is done.
Any other questions or comments from the board regarding that issue?
Oh, God, I don't know if I really want it. But let me just say this quickly, Mr. Savidio. I appreciate what you're saying. I will disagree with you in regard to the streets department. And this is rare that Mr. Morgan and I agree on something, as you probably know. But I will say this publicly. I think our streets department did an excellent job this year, considering everything that we had to go through. And of course, the residents here, we had to go through it too. I've lived in my home for 38 years. It's the first time I actually had to buy a snowblower. I had to go out and buy a snowblower the day after Christmas, but that's neither here nor there. But as we know, there are things that have been done in the past. You were talking about the storm drains. We have lots of them out there that need to be repaired, replaced. We are replacing them with precast. We're no longer building them on site. Of course, you see the old ones with concrete blocks. They just take an abuse, and it doesn't take long for these things to collapse. So the guys that we have and gals that we have in our streets department and sewer departments, I think they do an excellent job in doing that. I think they can. I think they do it. I know you may disagree on that. But moving on to the EIP, something you brought up, and I will totally agree with you. The number one priority we have here in the township is our infrastructure. I don't get calls about anything other than street repairs or why is my yard flooding. Those are the calls I get screamed at, and I'm sure my colleagues do too. Gary puts up with a lot of it, Annie puts up with a lot of it. The fact is, these are the important things that we need to take care of. As far as incentivizing other things, I'm probably leaning your way on that there. We need to get these other things taken care of, and how do we pay for them? I don't know, the EIP plan, the presentation that they made, it's not a plan, it was the presentation, the study. It said a lot of things that if any of us, the supervisors, were to say it, would be considered political rhetoric. At least that's the way I'm looking at it. It was nice to have another set of eyes come in and tell us things that sadly we already knew. You know, the handwriting was on the wall. I think that being the adults that we are, seeing that there are problems. The good times don't last forever. You know, there was a time when I had a lot more hair and I weighed a lot less, but you know, as I'm approaching that golden age there, things are starting to go apart on me. But the fact is that the township, we are heading in that direction. We need to have our eyes open and do the right thing. And this is where our leadership has to come in and take over. It always should be in place there, but we need to really show some leadership at these things. There's going to be some awful choices coming up here, and we're going to need input from the public. Will we always agree? Probably not. Even among the board, we might not agree. But somehow there'll be compromise, and something will come out, a good result out of it for the township. One thing we need to avoid is Act 47. We're nowhere near that. But if we continue doing what we're doing, we're heading right down that path, and we're going to be into a skid, and we won't be able to stop. So that's just my comments. I don't want to go on forever and ever, but let you know my feelings on that, Mr. Savidio. Thank you. Thank you for your thoughts, too. Appreciate it.
I'm retired, I got a lot of time.
Mr. Bucking, then?
Yeah, thanks for coming in, Mr. Savidio. I sensed you may be retired. That was just my police training coming out. But I do agree that I think the streets department did a great job this year. At least they plowed my road quite well. I was happy with
They
that.
skipped me a couple times.
Well,
You're taking that very wrong.
so I don't quite know where that came from in regards to the EIP study, but I think if we would have said that we're in trouble, I think the public would have said, oh, they're laying the grounds for a tax increase. But it came from the EIP study, which I think lends a little bit more impartiality to it, and we're not just crying poor, laying the grounds for a tax increase. So I think it was a good study, and I applaud the township for undertaking it and publicly acknowledging that there are issues coming up. So that's all I have to say right now. Thanks for caring enough to come in and speak to us.
Let's not make our own people poor.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, we usually call for adjournment at this point in the meeting. We do have our special meeting this coming Thursday. At that time, speaking of EIP and labor costs, we may have a contract to vote on, our labor agreement contract. Our union is voting on that tomorrow. It may behoove us to recess this meeting so that we can pick up this issue, pick this meeting up again on Thursday after our special session to possibly vote on that contract. And also, I believe there's an engineering quote that we'll be reviewing. So I would suggest perhaps rather than adjourning today, we recess today to reconvene on Thursday, May 24th at 9:45. Is that consistent with Second Class Township Code, Mr. Shaw?
Yes, the only thing you'll need to do is, from a notice perspective, the township needs to post it on the building, that the place, date, and time of the meeting, and where it's going to be held, as well as giving notice to any interested parties, and I believe we have to just simply send notice to the newspaper and the television station so that they know that there's going to be a special meeting as well. And that has to be done within 24 hours of the meeting, so we need to have that accomplished by 9:45 tomorrow morning.
Okay?
Any discussion on that, gentlemen? Does that make sense?
No. I'll move that we continue this meeting till that date and time.
So a motion to recess
Or
until
recess, I'm sorry, to recess.
May 24th at 9:45. That's in this
9:45.
chamber? Oh, that's a special meeting, but we'll be having,
Yeah, this will be after that.
Right.
reconvening at 9:45. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any questions from the public on that motion?
So I can talk again after 9:45.
Gee, or you can talk to us anytime you want.
You have our number, you know how to get us.
Mr. Grove?
Vote yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
And I vote yes to recess. We'll reconvene on May 24th at 9:45 in these chambers. The time is now 9:45, and I'll call to reconvene the Millcreek Township's Board of Supervisors meeting that was recessed on May 22nd, 2018. First on our agenda this morning is public comment on agenda items other than development or rezoning applications. Would anyone care to comment on the agenda? Next item is a consideration of engineering contract with Mark Corey and Associates. Ms. Sokol.
Yes, we have a culvert. It's a stack stone, old, probably about 200-year-old culvert on Old Perry Highway, just south of Hunter Willis Road. It is deteriorated quickly. We fixed it probably about 9 years ago, temporary fix, and now it's failing. It is imminently a catastrophic failure. We need to do an emergency replacement on it. I had Mark Corey, who is our structural engineer consultant, come up and meet with me up there. He agreed with me. He has started on the environmental work and everything else. He's given us this proposal for $12,000 to handle it from the beginning to end, environmental, utilities, any right-of-way, which I don't foresee any replacement bid specifications, design, and inspection.
So all pre-construction activities then?
Everything will be included in the $12,000 for the engineering. I do not have a construction cost estimate right now. My best guesstimate would be around 70,000, but like I said, I don't have a cost estimate. I don't have the depth. I don't have the width. I do have the opening. That's about it. We did not budget for this. However, we do have an emergency contingency fund, which this can come out of, and there are other funds that can be reallocated, I believe. Mark can justify this. I recommend that we approve this. This needs to be done. I agree with his assessment of the problem. They've already barreled off and cordoned off part of the roadway. This is a school bus route. The sooner we can get this, closed down, get this started done, we can get it done in the off-season of school and open it back up.
Any questions or comments from the board?
So, Annie, we would be doing the work?
No.
No.
No, this would be a bid-out job. This is a little larger than what we usually take. It's going to be an arch plate culvert. It's probably roughly 12 feet deep. This is bigger than what we would be doing, and plus it'll be happening during our paving and milling season. We won't have the manpower even if we were able to do the work. This is a bid-out job, definitely.
Okay.
So if there is catastrophic failure, as it pretty much indicates, then we're looking at further damage upstream from that there, flooding possibly?
If there's a
No.
catastrophic failure, it could block the creek. You could have upstream flooding. There's not a lot of residents in the area, but
still would be a
I mean,
big...
just the traffic going across it. It's not a high ADT, but it is like I say, a school bus route, and there is a subdivision up the road that a lot of people travel to get to.
Okay.
As far as funding the project, Ms. Sokol, Mr. Walding, I've mentioned before, the county does have a emergency liquid fuels committee that is run jointly with the CATO. Have we reached out to them about possibly securing county funds to assist in the project?
Yeah, I've reached out to Amy Murdoch, County Planning Director, for information on that. I'm waiting to receive it, but as soon as I do, we will try and apply for those funds.
And additionally, we had bid savings on the paving plan, so the like $100,000 under bid essentially, which could be utilized for this project as well.
We also
We
have
also have bid savings on the 88 projects that I have so far.
Okay.
All right. Any further questions or comments?
No.
All right, is there a motion to approve the engineering contract with Mark Horn Associates for the reference project at a cost not to exceed with $12,000, was it, Andy?
$12,000.
$12,000?
Yep, I so move on that.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Grove?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you. Next on our agenda is certificate of approval for Westlake Fire Department tax exempt purchase. This was discussed briefly at the first half of our meeting on May 22nd. I don't know if Mr. Bach or Mr. Grove would like to introduce the topic again.
Yes, of course, I see we have the chief from Westlake here, Rick Chow. I'm sure we'll need some comments from you, Rick. This is in regards to what's called a Sea Legs rescue boat for the Westlake Fire Department. So I'm just going to have to invite you up here, Rick. Hi. As a matter of history, I know you and I had worked previously in trying to get a boat launch down at Presque Isle on Beach 1. And of course, this is for the Westlake Fire Department rescue out on the lake side of the peninsula, right?
Well, not on the lake, but you could use it.
Anywhere,
Yeah,
but yeah.
absolutely. But primarily, the purchase for the Sea Legs boat is necessity, because the only launch points on Lake Erie is either Walnut Creek, or you have to go to East Avenue.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
In the city.
Right.
And it leaves uncovered, probably 13 miles of Presque Isle beaches and cottages that are not accessible without this boat.
Yeah, and I think we also looked at the end of Powell Avenue too, about possibly putting a launch there, and that's not much success.
We've explored those options. We worked 4 years ago, 5 years ago maybe, with Representative Pizarro's office, along with the township supervisors, Mike Kelly's office, Senator Toomey's office,
to try to get a boat launch put in at Beach 1 West,
Yeah.
which ended up failing due to other circumstances. We've tried for the federal grant that we made it to the last round and then got denied. We tried for the Portland Security Grant.
Yeah.
We got denied on that, and this has been a process ongoing for at least 5 years. And eventually, with the tourism increasing and the water rescues increasing, the Coast Guard being busier, Lakeshore Fire Department's the closest boat, and they come from Walnut Creek. And the access point along the lakefront is inaccessible.
Okay.
So we want to purchase this Sea Lakes boat, and we got rid of our jet skis. So we're not adding to the fleet, we're just replacing the jet skis with this boat.
Okay. Now this, if I understand, and tell me what about the Sea Lakes boat that makes it different?
The Sea Lakes boat is basically a boat on wheels. It has motorized wheels that can be launched from anywhere. You can pull it off the trailer in the middle of the roadway. You can drive it right across the beach, right into the water. The foot of Powell Avenue, there would have to be a lot of work done to even try to get a boat launch. You can drive that right into the water, right off the roadway.
Yeah.
So actually, Lake City Fire Department has one. They've had it down to Presque Isle. We've watched it, we've tested with it, and it's amazing what it can do.
Okay. Okay. I guess the concern that we have is that this was not something that was in the budget request for to the township. I mean, we knew nothing about this. I know in the presentation that Westlake made to the Fire Commission a few months back, actually it was last year now that I think about it, there was talk about replacing engine 483, which you guys did, right? We
Correct,
knew about
yes,
that.
yes.
This wasn't on that. That's
I guess, there's a little confusion between the fire departments and the fire commission. I sit on the fire commission.
Yeah, I
and
know.
there's confusion with the fire commission and with the supervisors. I don't know what needs to be notified and what doesn't, what purchases do and what doesn't.
Yeah.
I briefly spoke with Supervisor Bach and asked what do we need to advise the supervisors of? Are we purchasing a $30,000 generator for the fire station? Do we bring that to? I don't know. I know that this boat was discussed in the finance subcommittee on the commission, but I don't sit on that finance subcommittee, so I don't know those numbers or that process.
Okay.
It was an oversight on my part if it was supposed to be brought up to the commission, but I don't know what's to be brought up to the commission and what isn't.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
Yeah.
We're not using LST money or township funds. I guess this is just a process that goes on for years, but with the low interest loan.
Right.
That's not my department, so I don't know.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay, I gotta look for something. You guys have something there?
Any comments to add, Mr. Bach?
No, I've had discussions with Mr. Groh and Mr. Exley, Mr. Owlett, Rick here, regarding the need, for this vessel, this vehicle, and it seems to be a clear consensus, that it's necessary, it's needed. So nobody's disputing that. We're just here to get some clarification, I guess, from a representative of Westlake as to, the process involved when it was purchased. Obviously, I'm new to the commission, so, I need clarification as well. This is, new to me as well, so.
Yeah, I've seen these type of boats before. They're like a Zodiac, only it's bigger.
Correct.
And it's got the ability to come from land right into the sea, into the water immediately. So, yes, it does really cut down on response time. And whatever beach you happen to go to, or any sort of tributary or anywhere out in the lake, wherever you can get it on land, you can get into the water. So I definitely understand that. I guess the concern is the fact that this was not something that we as a township were made aware of that was on the radar. I guess that's the real point here. I mean, I have no problem supporting this here. It's just a matter of when did this come about? And,
well, like I explained before, Supervisor Grove, we've been in the makings for the last 5 years. You were part of signing off on that federal grant.
Yes,
And
that's
you
right.
wrote support letters. With
Right.
that,
Oh,
for
we
that
definitely
money.
did. Yeah.
I mean, this isn't. this isn't something we just drummed up a month ago and wanted. I mean, we've been working on that process to find any type of funding for the sea lights. We'd love to have it 5 years ago.
Of course.
So,
Yeah, but we didn't know about this part of it here. We know the launches, yes, we worked with everybody to try to find ways of getting a launch either on Powell Avenue or on the Beach One. But of course, as we know, both of them, nothing ever come to fruition on either one of them there. So when this came about, the only way we found out about it was when your solicitor contacted our solicitor about it. And it was like, I didn't know anything about it, so I went through the presentation that Westlake made there, like I said, last year, in regards to the equipment and planned replacement, and this was never even brought up in there. And I guess that's where the concern is. And I'm just hoping that should in the future, you know, when it comes to equipment, that we get a list of budgetary expenditures that you need. Remember, things are changing here we want to help our fire departments, but we need to know what is going on. And that's really what it comes down to. We really need to know. We're here to help, but we need to know what's going on.
and I know that in the budget, in the finance subcommittee, that's all been talked about. I mean, all our financials have been turned over, all our purchases. I know that on the commission side, and I sit on the operations subcommittee, but on the finance subcommittee, I know that's all been discussed. And Rick Trahosky from our department, who's our treasurer, sits on that committee, and he even said that that's been discussed. So I don't. I have no problem bringing anything up to you guys, but just I guess kind of have a little direction or I don't know.
Well, Mr. Shaw, I think I hear what you're saying about direction for the commission. I think you're aware this board recently took action to appoint Mr. Bach as a new liaison to the commission. So we now have the same supervisor who is liaison to our Office of Emergency Management, our police department, and now the commission. I think that'll probably help with the lines of communication to have that kind of consistency of expertise from Mr. Bach working with the commission. I know Jim is very committed to diving into maybe some of these communication issues that we're still trying to iron out in the past year and a half with the commission, and to be a little more active in giving some direction to that board. But I think generally what I would say as far as what needs to be discussed at the commission, at the minimum, anything that is going to require board action should be discussed at the commission to give the board a bit of a heads up. So whether it's a request for funding like LST or additional funds, or this action that does require action by the board at public meeting, just to give us a report ahead of time, which is why we kind of asked for this meeting now, rather than, otherwise this could have been just a report from the commission. So I think just for your benefit today, I think that's probably the basis. And then as far as what gets reported, one of the goals of the commission that we gave to them when we formed the commission was to create joint capital plans for the departments. And that's regardless of whether you're pursuing township resources or utilizing your own or other grants, having that coordinated capital plan for all four departments, all four township departments, MPS, and also Lakeshore, is one of the goals of the commission. So regardless of what the funding source, having that kind of plan in place, having that inventory of equipment and inventory of future purchases is really an important part of the commission's job. So I hope that gives you a little more direction on what the intention was, and I think moving forward, I think the board is going to be a little more, our board will be much more active and support some stronger communication between this board and the commission. Is that? Sure. I think it's a fair statement, Mr. Bond?
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, with that, I will call for a vote for certificate for approval of the tax-exempt purchase of Westlake Fire Department. Any other details we need to have in that motion, Mr. Shaw?
No, it's just simply you would need a motion to authorize you to execute the certificate of approval.
Yep. Okay.
Is there a motion?
I'll move on that action, certificate of approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Grove?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
I vote yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you very much.
Thanks, gentlemen. Thanks, Rick.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rick.
Next item of our agenda is the announcement of voting results for the collective bargaining agreement with our AFSCME local union. Mr. Jaszewski, I guess I'll let you give us the good news as the Director of Administration.
Yes, we were informed yesterday that the contract, the latest proposal was approved. It's a 5-year agreement with no increase in the last year, 3% this year, 2.5%, 2.5%, and 2%. So the average over the life of the contract is a 2% average. There's a bunch of details. I don't know if you want to get into all of them. I don't have a count. I don't believe they gave that to us, but it was ratified on their end, and so now we would be, it would require us to, you guys, to ratify the contract as well.
Thank you, Mark. Questions or comments from the board?
Maybe we need a little more time to think about it, or no? Just kidding.
Mr. Grove?
Yeah. This took 17 months, I believe, from start to finish. My opinion is rather shameful that it's taken that long when we're talking about 80 employees. I just want to leave it with this. I guess when we start out on a bad foot, we can't expect to get things fixed up right away. It does take time to patch up misunderstandings, miscommunications, misunderstandings of comments, things like that. I'm glad we have a contract. I am really bothered by the way and the time it took. It is really troublesome, and I hope we never see something like this again this long. It would be one thing if it went to arbitration. I know with the police department contract, that went to arbitration. That's allowed under Act 111 of the Pennsylvania statutes. That's the way that one goes. Police and firefighters, career firefighters, do have that ability to go Act 111. I just hope we never have this again. It set off a bad frame, the morale of the employees, and before anybody thinks that there's any sort of attempt to be lovey-dovey with the employees, that's not the case. The fact is, it's just the time and then the money that it cost the township for legal representation on this. I just think it was a bit excessive. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I am glad we have a contract. Thank you for everybody that has worked on this, and let's just move forward from here. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Grove. My commentary is I really appreciate the work that our union put into this contract. Yesterday, our AFSCME employees voted very selflessly to approve a contract that I think is going to put us in a very strong, or at least a stronger financial position in the future. This vote by our union, I think, was for the benefit of the township, the benefit of our taxpayers, and I hope our residents appreciate the changes that our union voted for yesterday. Mr. Grove's right, it was an 18-month process, which I think is a reasonable length of time when we're talking about the kind of changes that we've made. This contract for our AFSCME union has not changed significantly in 20 years. We brought attention to the financial difficulties to our union to consider. Recent reports have shown some pretty stark projections for the township and necessitated us to have a very lengthy education process with our union to explain the challenges we were facing, to explain cost projections, to explain in reality our township has flatlined in revenues. And I really appreciate the time that our local negotiating team, both the management side and the AFSCME representatives, put into this to create a contract that I believe is fair for both sides, and as I mentioned, puts us in a very stable financial position in regards to labor costs into the future. Just so residents know, our union yesterday voted to reduce their annual increases by a third. They voted to double their health care contributions, and they voted to revise a pay scale for new employees. So they conceded quite a bit for the benefit of our taxpayers, and this board certainly appreciates their efforts, and I hope our residents do as well.
That is true. The union did give up a lot. Yes, they did.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
I'll just briefly say I was only involved in the process for 4 months, and I learned a lot. I just hope that everybody, the management side and the union side, learned from the 18-month process. So it's going to be here before you know it. It's only 3.5 years away before the next contract comes up. So hopefully they've learned from the process, and the next process can maybe go smoother, quicker. We can only hope on that, and we can learn from the past, and hopefully we won't repeat that, and just move on from here. I agree. I think it's just time to move on and not dwell on the past, but simply learn from it, and hopefully that's accomplished. And I think it was a fiscally responsible contract, and I think it was concessions on both sides, and that's where we are, and happy to have it done.
We all gain something from this. We gain knowledge.
Well, with that, is there a motion to approve the new collective bargaining agreement with AFSCME?
I move to approve that contract.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Mr. Groh?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item is citizens to be heard. Hearing none.
Mr. Chairman, there is one additional item that wasn't on the agenda, but I think it is in your packets with respect to its proposed resolution 2018 R22. We were contacted late in the day yesterday from PennDOT that they needed a resolution executed for purposes of the Cherry Street work. If you recall, the supervisors had approved that agreement, I think, at the May 5th meeting or May 8th meeting. In order to satisfy their need for that resolution, I would recommend that the supervisors approve Resolution 2018 R22, which simply indicates that at the May 8th, 2018 Board of Supervisors public meeting, the Board of Supervisors approved the execution of the general grant agreement for federal aid highway projects relating to a public road improvement project from Cherry Street, for Cherry Street from Young Road to Bladen Road, and authorized the chairman of the Board of Supervisors to execute such agreement, and that Ann Sokol would be designated as the contact person.
So this is basically an administrative correction to
Correct.
an action already approved by the board for the purposes of the PennDOT contract.
Correct.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Yes, I'll move to approve that resolution as stated.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
This is on our agenda. Any questions or comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Mr. Groh?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
I vote yes.
And I vote yes. Any additional business to discuss? Then I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn at 10:10 a.m.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.
You're watching the Millcreek Government Channel, powered by WQLN Public Media.
The time is now 9:30. I will call the May 24th, 2018 special public meeting of the Millcreek Township Board of Supervisors to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll now call for public comment on agenda items other than development or rezoning applications. No comments from the public. Our next item on our agenda is the announcement of bids received for Millcreek Township milling and paving projects for 2018. Mr. Snyder.
Good morning, gentlemen. Bids were opened yesterday for the 2018 milling and paving project. Also in this project are 64 ADA accessibility ramps. We received 3 bids. The first one from Joseph McCormick Company for $699,257.50. Russell Standard for $670,970. And for Mayer Brothers for $639,839. I looked over the bids and ran the numbers, and everything seems to be correct. It would be my recommendation that the contract be awarded to Mayer Brothers Construction.
Any questions or comments from the board?
I'll just be quick. It's good to see the numbers that close. You know, and plus we have extra money left over in the account now, I believe. About $100,000 is what we've reserved, I believe.
Is that right, Gary?
Is that correct?
Yes, I believe
So we might be able to do some other work somewhere else?
Right.
Good. Okay.
Mr. Snyder, I understand that the bid documents had kind of priority roadways and then had additional roads if budget allowed. Does this $600,000 some bid, does that cover all of the roads that we were hoping to pave this year, including?
It covers all the roads. The Cherry Street was included in that just in case the monies didn't come through from where we were looking for. We figured we could switch that out, and we have a couple other roads that that would add up to the same amount of money for that.
Okay.
That was really the only road we were really iffy about whether it was going to go.
Okay, because I know we had some roads on there that in the event the bids came in high, you were going to strike
Right.
off the list. But everything we planned on getting paved this year is going to get paved then.
Right.
All right.
We came in low. Good.
And that was Mayer Brothers, Gary?
Yes, sir.
All right, any further comments from the board?
Nope.
Is there a motion to approve the contract with Mayer Brothers for the 2018 milling and paving projects at a contract price of $639,839?
I will move on that action.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Groh?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item is citizens to be heard. If anyone in the audience care to address the board? Hearing none, I'll call for a motion to adjourn the special meeting.
I'll move to adjourn this special meeting at 9:34. Yeah, 9:34.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, Mr. Snyder and Ms. Sokol, Mr. Waldinger, for your work on that bid request and the paving project. Thank you.
You're watching the Millcreek Government Channel, powered by WQLN Public Media.